if you can just remember that really, really simple tagline of, hey, I worked for 10 years in a board a cruise ship as a crew member. And just to give you a little perspective on the life of a crew member, is typically a crew member is doing a 7-month contract. They're working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, for, every single day for the duration of that contract. And, in the beginning, you start doing a 7-month contract. Eventually, you get promoted into management. You're probably doing more than those 70 hours. But the complexity of what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis begins to change. So just giving those numbers, and we talked at 2 webinars ago, is that people pay attention when you're speaking, when you give statistics. It's just factual. That essentially, when you are able to rattle off the facts, it's not enough to say, hey, when you're a crew member, you work really, really hard. You have to say, hey, when I was a crew member, I worked 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 70 hours a week for 6 to 7 months straight. People are like, what? And then it begins to spark questions. You never had a day off? No. And then you begin to explain it. Well, I have lots of time off. Well, and how do you survive? And you really, truly, your talk track starts to begin to say, well, I really believe that every single individual should have the opportunity to be a crew member, because it shows you what you're capable of. It shows you your resilience. It shows you how you can work that long for that period of time in such complex conditions. And then you get to elaborate on what that complexity is. But if you are able to start with the facts of, hey, this is how many hours we worked, that's the foundation that starts to earn you respect with potential employers, because they see what, yeah, exactly. Any of these other departments work up to 14 hours a day. And the beauty is that very few people understand the operation of a cruise ship. I think that the last statistics that I had seen, I think it's under 5% of the North American public have cruised. I think that it's a very, very low statistic. And so when you look at the cruise industry, and when we went to Sea Trade in March, or beginning of April, I think end of March, is that a lot of the talk track coming from the cruise lines is they're not looking at competing with each other for guests. They're looking at penetrating the non-cruiser market. So you have this massive amount of people who have not even been exposed to cruising. So that's just in North America, and cruising is primarily a North American business. If you start looking into some of the further away countries, if you start looking at South Africa and India and South America, that statistic is even lower. So that means that people's understanding and their bias against what you were doing is even stronger. So this is why your talk track and your value has to be so beautifully buttoned up that you can communicate and stay engaged and intriguing to them, because it's such a curious industry for people. So again, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 70 hours a week minimum, as we know, and for a 6 to 7 month contract. And people would say, how is that humanly possible? And then you say, well, the majority of the ship work contracts like that, they used to be 6 months, now they're around 7 months. Some divisions like the spa or some other areas do up to a 9-month contract, where other management type positions will do a 4-month contract. And positions like a captain, who's minimal, or a hotel director will do a 2-month or a 3-month contract. And all of a sudden you're opening this amazing can of worms for them that they're going, ooh, tell me more, what is it like? And you want to ensure that you are continually driving the conversation with a potential employee or the person that you're talking to, because you want to make sure that you're getting the points across that really play to the industry in a way that gives it respect and gives you validity for what you did. And we have a joke, I think, that we have on our website somewhere, is that, a lot of crew get off of ships and then people think that they have been sunbathing for the last, 10 years. That really, really educating people to say, hey, no, this is a very, very complex job. And let me tell you the reasons why. Not only the work hours, but being able to contextualize that this skill can transfer to your workplace. This skill can transfer to me as an employee for you. So the real, like, this is just kind of my intro. The real thing that I want to dig into, and Christian's seeing this as he talks to candidates all day long, is that identifying transferable skills. Is that you have to ensure by this concept of transferable skills is going, they're skills that you acquired being a former crew member that can be applied to a future job. But if you have not rehearsed or you have not written down how you're going to dictate it, like my 10 hours, 7 days, 7 months, or 77 months, if you've not rehearsed it, I've rehearsed that line over and over and over and over again so I can say it in my sleep. If you've not rehearsed that line, then when you get into an interview or then when you get into some type of review process, you're going to stumble. So this is why looking at your transferable skills, looking at your resume and looking at your CV and say, okay, what were the things that I did as a crew member that were unique and that were different and that helped me stand out? And Christian, I want to kind of walk through this with you because I know I'm going to miss a few of them. I think first and foremost, an incredible thing that is stand out is the dynamic of having to do your job and also being guest facing. So I think the guest services part is something that is such a transferable skill that you have a professionalism, you know how to treat people, you know how to deal with high complex situations. And in interviews, typically, if an interview is done well, and unfortunately a lot of interviews are not done well, but if an interview is done well, the person is going to ask you to provide them examples. Hey, can you give me an example of a time when you had to deal with conflict with customers? And we always tease, I'm like, when you're a former crew member, you're like, oh, do you want one from yesterday or do you want one from last week? Or do you want one from last month or do you want one from last year? Because it's something that you're dealing with on practically a daily basis. And Christian, what's yours that you tell that about dealing with conflict with a customer? I know you haven't had to do an interview process in a bit, but can you think of one off the top of your head?
When I asked them, whenever we ask people,
no, think of yourself personally. I'm trying to think of my because I haven't dug into the archives of my brain to look at that, but I'm trying to think of customer service stuff that recently that I've had to deal with.
But it was our daily bread, regardless of what position you worked in. Since you were guest facing, we were a walking guest services desk wherever we were.
You guys in Adventure Ocean, you guys dealt with a lot of parents wanting to move kids between age groups.
It was but the fact that it was another desk by itself, it was the spa and the kids club. It was another desk, so people, and we were empowered to just make decisions and help with different departments, regardless of whether it was your area or not. So you had to own the experience, regardless of whether it was yours or not.
Yeah, Juan David. Juan David Blanco. You have to unmute yourself, Juan.
I think you unmute Juan. No, was he probably raising his hand?
He's just waving at us.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
We can hear you.
Myself. Yes, let me introduce myself. My name is Juan Blanco. I'm from Barranquilla, Colombia, and I recently got contacted by your company. And well, everything that I've been looking through your videos and what you're mentioning now takes me to believe that besides the transferable skills that people get when working in customer service, you get way more from other departments. Most of the time, they have this division that makes events for crew members where you can also increase your family. You call it at that time on the shifts, but they become later your network and your connections. And they are also there to give you some other transferable skills, plus the trainings that you get not only from the cruise line, but also from the company that hires you, that they are particularly perfectly crafted to get really good skills to upsell, to get a better relationship with the customers. And these are things that you cannot do while you're working, but that you need to take time of those 10 hours that you work a day to do it while you're working. So you become practically a person that works 24/7 in order to grow and learn as much as you can to give value to the company that you're working to. Like it might be Royal Caribbean, or it might be one of their partners that hires you. They also have like really, really good trainings that are not the mandatory for everyone, that brings up a lot of skills that can be transferable and useful when joining other companies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Juan, you were with Starboard, or what company were you with?
Yes, I work with Starboard for about 9
Okay.
years on board.
Okay.
My
Oh,
own agency
amazing.
was as a shopping host, and I really like the possibility that I could work with other departments. They teach me a lot about what they were doing, and you became like a person, like a in the trust person for all those other guests that were looking solutions or problems in other departments. Sometimes I was even contacted by guest services, as they were not people able to speak German at a particular time, so I can go there and translate and help them uh, work their issues. And those were clients or customers that would be there not only for the guest service issue that you solved, but also to provide them with information about what you were doing on board. Since you already
Yeah.
gained their trust, it was going to be way easier to recommend them something they would really like to do while on their vacations.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just really, as you walk into interview experiences, when you walk into any potential opportunities that you have to speak to somebody about your experience, is making sure that you have very specific and clear examples of a time when you had to deal with a conflict. I know that one of the examples that I always use was, there was a time when I was working on board a ship, and they the it was actually the port of Barcelona. They went on strike, and so all the fishermen blocked the port, and so we couldn't get in. So we had thousands of guests standing on the pier waiting to get on board the ship that wasn't there, that was stuck outside. And then you had thousands of guests that were on board the ship that were upset because they were missing their flights. And this went on for a full day of people upset on board, not understanding why we couldn't get in, and then on the other end, having to communicate them in high stress, high conflict situation, and then having, after you go through 12, 16 hours of that, then you all of a sudden had to joyfully welcome other guests on board and deal with the anger that they were experiencing from having part of their vacation delayed. And to layer on top of that, they were Spanish citizens, most of them, and so that added another layer of language and complexity and joy. They were Catalan, most of them. So it's just having those examples on the tip of your tongue and being able to talk through your potential employer. Hey, here's an example of one situation that I dealt with, and explain step by step what happened. That's just one thing connected to conflict. But the thing is, as you go through your resume and as you look at it, the different positions that you held on board, start going through your archives of experiences that you had, especially if you're on board more than 5 years, you're going to start forgetting some of those memories. So before you're doing your interview, make sure that you're taking notes and you're writing down, oh, this is a great story on this. This is a great story on this, and practice telling that story. And I would even recommend videoing yourself. So video yourself telling that story, that experience. So it's something that rolls off the tip of your tongue, and you don't have time, because if you can't say it in a concise and clear way, people are going to lose the point of your story. So telling that story of when they say, hey, tell me about a time when you dealt with a customer service issue. Well, let me tell you about a really, really big customer service issue that I dealt with. It was on board Brilliance of the Seas in whatever year it was. And we arrived at the port, and when we arrived there, all of the fishermen were blocking the entrance to the port. So what happened is we had thousands of guests on board that wanted to get off, and we had thousands of guests that were beginning to accumulate on the pier. And talk them through that story. And we actually have a webinar that's all about storytelling. Don Miller is a really, really great guy. He wrote a book called Story Brand. And he talks about taking your listener through that natural progression of the story. Hey, here's the setup to what happened. Here was the escalation, and here was the resolution. And you start to become the hero of the story because you are able to connect to every single person that was impacted by that experience. And they're going, wow, somebody navigated a situation as complex as this. I have another story about a norovirus outbreak in Tampa that we had to go up to. I can't remember what ship it was on. We had to go up and deal with. So going through and making sure that you have maybe, I would say, minimum 3 to 4 of those stories at the tip of your tongue, and then also give a much more specific one. I have a story about standing on doing tour dispatch for tenders in Mykonos. And when I had a guest that just screamed me out, screamed in my face, and was irate and borderline aggressive, but me being able to talk to my potential employer about, hey, this is how I dealt with this situation. This is when I asked for help. These are the steps that I went through, that they're able to see that I'm not just saying, hey, I worked really hard and I dealt with a lot of customer service, but here are the specific examples. And look at the things that you're trying to highlight in your story. You're trying to highlight your adaptability, that being on board, you're in this petri dish of dealing with highly passionate situations. So when people are on vacation, they're really passionate about missing a protocol. They're really passionate about making sure that the birthday cake gets to their grandmother on the right night. And then customer service is that you have the opportunity to go above and beyond. So my husband has a really great story of time that he spent with a Make-A-Wish child when he was working for Disney. And that's a story that people can just connect and relate to. So adaptability, customer service, communication. One of the things that is incredibly valuable is the communication that we have to do on board a cruise ship, but a communication in multiple languages with multiple cultural barriers. Is that you're not only talking from a crew member perspective. If you're leading a division or you have direct reports, it's communicating a message to somebody who English is their second language, or maybe you say something that offends somebody. Telling those stories of when you had an experience and it went wrong and how you recovered it. And then teamwork is how you as a leader got different nationalities. And even if you weren't a division head or a manager, is that maybe you were just leading somebody on, redoing a shop on board. Is that, hey, I had to deal with this situation where, I had, and this is the life of a crew member, where we were doing a project together and 2 of the people are in it. They used to be a couple last night and today they aren't. And so being able to manage those situations that are real life, that employers will give you this layer of respect that no one else is competing for the job could have. But it's up to you to communicate the stories effectively. And then problem solving is that going when you have something, there are seemingly impossible tasks that you face on a voyage by voyage basis working on board. Somebody running out of their medication, somebody wanting you to surprise, somebody you wanting to do an engagement, something that is seemingly impossible, and talking them through how you made it possible, and really demonstrating your character in the process. So and again, the real life examples that you should have is making sure that you're taking off adaptability, customer service, communication, teamwork, and problem solving. Because all of these skills are skills that any employer is going to require and want you to be able to demonstrate. But if you don't have the examples and you're just talking and, oh yeah, when I worked on board, customer service is very important. You get guests that come and they complain and and you're talking in circles and they're not paying attention. When you're able to bring them into your story of specific situations that happen, then you're able to keep them into your attention. Anything else to add to that, Christian?
The part that you mentioned about the flexibility, adaptability, I want to just linger on that a little bit more, because in no other job on land do you go through potentially 3 different managers within one contract. And land, you go into an organization and it's pretty much set, and people are lobbyists, and you're working with dinosaurs that sometimes have been in those positions for years. And it's a culture that just lingers and stays over time, but not on ships. You sign on, and maybe a week later your manager signs off, and then you get another manager come for 4 months, and then your contract is longer than that. So you outdate that contract, and then you end up working with a third one potentially. And it's not the fact of having to adapt to a different style. It's just in the beginning you have to prove yourself all over again, regardless of how many handover notes are left about you. It's really your work and your ethic and everything that you start building up. The moment you least expected, you already have a reputation. And to this, I'm sure we all can speak about, like, our reputation and ships precede us. They know, oh, I know who Michelle is. Oh, have you worked with her? No. But I know who she is. I've heard about her, and they all know about us. Huh? They all know how you work, what you do, and what. So it's really the decisions you make, even though you think they're not that strong, or that they really do have a rippling effect. And it's just that, not only that, but also the adaptability that it comes with the ever changing people that you work with, and not only your manager, but also your co-workers and the network. And you're signing on. You never sign off with the same people that you started your contract with. You will always be the most senior person on your team the day that you leave. So that just tells us how much and how ever changing that atmosphere is.
Yeah, that's a great example, that adaptability. And when you think about the workplace today and how in probably the last 10 years it has shifted, where people would go into a job and they would stay in that job for potentially their lifetime. They'd stay with a certain company. At this point, they estimate that people are moving jobs about every 18 months, where before that was unheard of. And people are doing it for a variety of reasons, because it's a supply and demand, is that there's a lot of jobs. The economy is doing well, believe it or not, no matter what your local news may say, the economy is doing well. So there's a lot of demand for tourism. There's a lot of demand for travel, and there's just not enough people coming in to fill the jobs. So when that happens, is that people start rotating through jobs more quickly, because there's more opportunities out there. They can move, I remember during my days at the corporate headquarters, you realistically, it was going to take you 10 years to get into a management level position. Now you're talking about 2 years, maybe less. People are moved into management positions. And so that gives you this movement, and that gives you the ability to talk about your adaptability, is that, hey, I'm used to working with different leadership. And here's an example of one that I did really well under their leadership. I learned a lot. I adapted to working with them. I developed my skill. Here's one that I had more of a challenge with. And these are the reasons why I had a challenge with them. His style was this and my style was this. The show had to go on and we had to work together, but it gives you the ability to demonstrate that you recognize that there's going to be difference in personalities. There's going to be difference in characters and value systems, but the work has to go on. And employers are going to welcome having a low drama, get on with the show type of employee, because it's not what they're experiencing today on land, unfortunately. It's that a lot of employees, because they're the ones that are running the show, they're saying, oh, I want this type of work. I want these type of work hours. I want these type of benefits. The employees are dictating a lot. And coming from the ship world, where truly on a ship, your life is dictated to you. And what are the rules you're going to follow? What are the food you're going to eat? What are the things that you're going to do? It's just the structure of the organization, like the military, is that you're able to say, hey, I know how to follow and respect my leadership. I know when the captain says something, this is what you do. When the hotel director says something, this is what you do. I don't necessarily have to agree with that, but I have to do it. So I think that's really, really important. And I would just caution everybody is that we see, and Christian, I don't know if you see it more, is that I know in a lot of the conversations that I have with former crew, sometimes former crew can be a little bit jaded, is the word in English, where they're just a little bit negative, and they're telling the negative stories, and they're telling them that they're complaining about the guests. You need to get rid of that crew bar dialogue. There's no place for it when you're applying for a job. You have to look at the really good, unique things that you got out of being a crew member and effectively communicate that to potential employers. You have to, and I was interviewing somebody, nobody on the line, I was interviewing somebody and he went into a rant about something about the leadership and how the guy wasn't qualified to have his job, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, stop. It was like seeing a plane nosedive. It was like one of those. I said, just be really careful that the dialogue that you're able to have in a casual setting with former coworkers is not something that anybody wants to hear. And when you get used to speaking that way for years and years and years, it just becomes the norm in your communication. So this is what it goes back to, is making sure that you're taking your resume, you're making notes of what are the stories, and then you're practicing and practicing and practicing those stories so that they put you in the best light possible. Why are you laughing, Christian?
Because it's so true. Right now, that when you just asked me if I had an example, I had to stop myself in my tracks, like cold turkey. I had to stop because I was going to say, oh my God, I had this one guest. And I said, no, because I'm no longer that position and they are no longer a guest. We were just two people filling a role and they were paying to be there. I was getting paid to do a job, right? So, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. Like to this date, I still find myself having to stop myself going through that.
It's one of those things that you almost, I guess it's the way as a crew member to break the tension, because if not, you're going to break as a person. When you're dealing with that much customer conflict, when you're dealing with that much, even in hotels, people work a shift, a 10-hour shift, and then they go home and they get to have dinner with their family and digest. But you go to the crew mess and you're telling the same stories of this annoying guest, and it's like this virus that keeps feeding off of each other and growing bigger and bigger, because you never get to disconnect. So just being really conscious of not letting your mind shift back into that mentality in your storytelling, but going, hey, where my experience on board ships, these golden nuggets of what I got to do that nobody else in their life gets to do, how do I ensure that I tell it in a way that shows myself in the best light? And, coming up with those really, really extreme situations that probably nobody on the planet has experienced, norovirus outbreaks to, fishermen strikes in Barcelona, to I had to go on board and fire somebody in Brazil once. That was not a fun one. I had to, I had to do a Coast Guard drill in Portland, Maine, where we had to do a simulation. That was a cool one. But also coming up with some cool adventure experiences that I think are really important. Is that just telling some ridiculously fun story of what you got to do as a crew member at this point in your life when you were young. And I tell the experience of like, hey, when I first got on board a ship, like I thought I brought like little white sailor shorts. Like I don't know what I thought, that I wasn't going to be wearing a uniform or something. And I like thought I was going to be like walking around on the pool deck greeting people and living this totally different life than what it was. And then I got what we kindly refer to as the Burger King uniform. It was like this horrible polo shirt that looked like you were wearing a balloon. And like, those are funny stories that people can relate to. Telling about like your first crew bar experience when you go, like those are behind the scenes curious things that people can laugh and see a part of your personality. So make sure you pepper in those and tell stories about the costumes that I had to wear, or the ridiculous. I always tell a story about a fluorescent pink wig and boa, and I thought it was a joke that people were giving it to me to wear for one of the theme nights. Those are things that engage people and start to get to know your personality. So make sure to pepper those in against the professional or the conflict-ridden one. And then the next one is targeting your job search. So the two things that we've talked about is like, first is identifying which of your skills are transferable. The second is communicating those skills in a way that is effective and that's going to make you resonate. So people are not going to remember those interviews when you're just giving generic answers. If I never heard another human being say in an interview again, I'm a people person, I would live a happy life. But everybody says it, and they're like, well, I like people, and that's why da-da-da-da-da. Stay away from any of those generic statements. Make sure that you're giving specifics and communicating specifics that are compelling people to get on board with your story, narrative that are interesting and different, so that when they're walking away and they're telling their boss about the candidates that they interviewed, they go, oh, this one girl or this one guy had this really intriguing story about this thing. It was funny and it was engaging and I remembered it. And then the next is targeting your job search. So after you've got kind of your niche, it's that really looking at industries and roles that align well with the skills that you're looking for. And Jose talked about last week is that he's looking into the healthcare space in Brazil, the hospital space, because the hospital space is trying to make the hospital experience more of a guest services, hospitality, hotel-esque experience. And so really looking at industries that are not specifically the ones that you would expect yourself to be in, but going, okay, how can I take these unique stories and unique experiences and what industries could find useful my skills? So start making a list and start going through LinkedIn, because I find a lot of people, they will niche themselves into the job search of, hey, just looking for hospitality jobs, just looking for this. But look into the healthcare industry. Look into other, if you worked within like inventory or in the shops on board, look at a variety of different retail, look at a variety of different logistics, because you will be shocked. But the difficult part for you is you have to bridge the gap for potential employers to see you as a fit for their industry. So if you're an inventory manager, then you need to be able to bridge the gap to a logistics company and an inventory manager. You have to have the stories and the talk track to explain to them the complexities of what the job of an inventory manager does on board and how that directly relates to logistics. And again, part of that is taking the job description that's posted in the listing. And then also, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is that also making sure that your resume, it has different versions. So if you're looking for a job that is in the hospitality industry, hotel, that your resume is going to look a certain way if you're going for a hotel industry. If you're looking at the hospital industry, you're trying to get into hospitality, that your resume is going to look a different way. So making sure that you take the time, and really there is no excuse not to do it with ChatGPT right now, is that you're creating different versions, and then layering on that is you're having all of the right stories connected to what you should have to tell in your interviews. And then really, truly, this is going to help your job success. So identifying unique positions that your goal is to get the interview. Your goal is that when you apply for the job or you get referred to the job, that your resume looks great. It speaks to the language of what the job description is that they're hiring to, and then you nail it with the stories. You nail it with what you're saying. And I would really, really encourage you is that if you are unsure of what industry to look in, then use AI tools like ChatGPT and tell it a little bit about your background and say, hey, this is my background. I've experienced in this, this, and this. Copy and paste your resume if you want to in it, and say, can you give me some guidance on some industries I should start to look in that are outside of the cruise industry, for example. And it's going to give you a beautifully curated list of potential areas that you can start looking. So start getting on those forums, start getting in networking groups, and then start adapting your resume to say it spits you out 5 different things, have 5 different resumes that will fit what those industries are, and then begin to narrow down into them. And then really, truly for me is that make sure that you are getting out from behind your computer and that you're starting to network and go into the places where those potential jobs are. And I see so many crew members get off of shift and go into positions that are below what their skill set are. And I don't know what it is. if it's complacency, but when I look at the map, kind of the heat map of what's happening in the employment world, is that there are enough jobs out there. There are enough jobs out there that you can be picky. And there are an exception to that. There are very few countries that have double-digit unemployment rates, and that's going to make it much, much more difficult. But that's when I say that you double down and you start looking for virtual employment that's outside of your country. But get into those LinkedIn groups where those positions are. Be brave enough to put your CV out there to make sure that your LinkedIn is beautiful and really well updated. But back to the real topic of this is that ensure that you are communicating clearly the value of hiring a crew member, that you are putting posts out there, that you're talking about skills, that you're telling funny stories that are going to get shared and get engagement from people. And just be clear if you're looking for a job. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm looking for employment. And saying I'm looking for employment is much more than changing that little banner on your LinkedIn. It's much more than that. It's posting on a daily basis or at least every other day. And it's reading articles, it's posting articles, it's tagging people. It's getting into groups. You should be in any of the cruise related ones, any of the hotel ones, any of the industries that ChatGPT has pushed out for you is interesting fields for you to look in there. Start digging into those associations and attending those events, because you will be shocked at somebody who just shows up and tells a better story than the last person, what they can get. And, you know, my husband and I were reflecting on this recently, is just the impact that AI is going to have on the future right now, is that what is going to help candidates stand out is their ability to communicate their experience in an effective way. And if this unique experience, immersion that you had of working as a crew member, if you cannot communicate it in a positive, effective way, then it was a waste for your future, really, truly for your future employment. It should be giving you tenfold value for a potential employer. But that's why we're here, to help guide and coach and push you guys into a direction that could be a good fit for you. And we know that we're in our infancy as an organization, but that doesn't change what our mission is. Our mission is to ensure that crew members have a successful life after they get off ships. We want them to have lifetime employment. We want that employment to stay within the cruise industry, because there are so many potential employers, from cruise lines to Starboard to One World Spa to ports to restaurants within ports that need former crew members. It really is massive what it could become, but a lot of it's going to rely on the crew members' ability to professionally develop themselves and continue, like Juan Blanco said, is continue to communicate in a way that says, hey, when I was on board, not only did I do my job, but I also educated myself. I also found these opportunities. And that's where I will, velvet hammer is a term that's used in customer service, where you like give somebody a little bit of a ding, but it's soft when you give them a ding. That's where I will push and push and push a former crew to go, hey, this is what the potential is of what you could do. This is the potential of what you could grow into. This is the potential of what could be. And I think you guys can just challenge yourself to say, all right, how do I look at my experience? How do I hone in my stories? How do I go outside of my typical network to ensure that my experience is correctly communicated to those that are around me? Christian, what have I missed? Anything?
I think we covered it all. Resilience. We covered resilience. That's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
Just bringing back form. Yeah.
Tell me why resilience.
It's just bringing back up again every time life brings you down. It's just that tenacity that crew members are built with. It's the living in the cruise after cruise, and okay, one cruise is over, and that next cruise mentality, right? Like it can't linger in your mind. The
Yeah.
problems from the previous voyage cannot linger into the next one. But on the back of your head, you're dealing with guests that disembarked, plus the ones that are on board and planning for the ones that are coming. So all that happens behind the scenes in your mind, in your brain, but in your face and in your day to day, it's just focusing on the ones that are currently on board. So I think that's a superpower that we all crew members have, that
Yeah.
it's not
Can you
often
remember
spoken
that
about.
feeling of like, everybody can relate to this, of like, you just had a really bad voyage. Like the weather was bad, the guests were cranky, and you're just like, let's just get to day 7 because I get to start over again. Like that's a pretty cool, powerful feeling that you generally don't get in life. That everything seems to go wrong. And I think that it's like this exercise of a muscle that we got as
Mhm.
crew members to go, all right, that was a crappy voyage, but there's a new one coming up next. And we do have a webinar that we talked about resilience. So I would really encourage you guys to listen to this because it can be daunting going through the job search. And somebody just messaged me. Saying that she's been 7 months off of shifts and she's still looking for something. So that's a hard place to be in. That's a hard place to be in because you're trying, but really, truly is most of it can boil down to your efforts and your ability to communicate what you did. Is that it's not the world's fault that they don't understand how a cruise ship operates. It's actually this beautiful golden ticket that you have to get people to talk to you and to be curious about you. So if you communicate effectively in your CV what your experience is, then you can get the interview. And if you at the interview can communicate effectively what's unique about you, you can get the job. So making sure that you're showing up, that you're posting, that you're going to networking events, but you're being interesting and you're being engaging. And for anybody who's an introvert, that sucks sometimes, but that's where you have to rely on your stories because your stories are not anything that's going to fail you. So if you're struggling coming up with small talk or dialogue, go back to the stories that are interesting because people will pepper you with 100 questions. So anything else coming in your pipeline, Christian, that you want to tell everybody about? I think
In regards to
profiles, you want to talk about profiles on our online platform?
sorry, come again? Profiles on?
On our online platform, everybody updating their profiles.
Yes. So if you haven't done it, I'm pretty sure everyone here has done it. Michelle was the last one that submitted hers. So remember, just update your profile in our platform and you will see often you're also going to get push notifications where more positions become available. But we reached out to you the moment that you signed up, and I'll continue to continue keeping you in touch and up to date when more positions become available as we go through the pipeline and the hiring process. Really eager to see more of this happening in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and just remember, you guys, is that to use our services. Thank you for sharing that. To use our services is completely free. The employer, the cruise line, the cruise is the one who actually pays for our fees. So essentially, we hire you locally in your country, and we pay you locally. We pay into all of your governmental taxes, requirements, Social Security, whatever the things are in the country that you're in. That's part of our business. And that's really, truly how we believe it's a right way to do it, to keep people for long term for cruise lines. But in your online profile, it's really important that you review all of your information and that you make sure that it's correct. Just like we're talking about your LinkedIn, just like we're talking about your resume or your CV, is make sure that everything's here. So when we search or we have a position, our platform is intelligent enough so it will match people to certain positions based on their experience. But if you didn't write it in there, then we can't match it. If you just uploaded your resume and crossed your fingers and didn't edit it, so I would just encourage you guys to make sure that you go in, check it, make sure everything's correct, and then we will put any new job openings in our online platform. And if you need any help, you can email, thank you, sign up, see our open positions here. Wilhelmina sent that. And if you guys need any help, just feel free to send us a message. Our email that goes for the whole team is apply, APPLY, and we'll get on it. So you guys, I'm wishing everybody an amazing, fruitful, productive week. Get on to your storytelling and get on to your talk tracks so that you guys are sure that you're answering all of the questions in the right way that give you the credit that you deserve. So have a great week and thanks for coming. Bye.